everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Kennedy, and today on Most Amazing, we are going to be counting down the top 10 terrifying secrets hidden in the world's most famous museums. Let's get started. First up in our number 10 spot, the Hands Resist Him painting. As far as paintings go, the Hands Resist Him is probably considered one of the most haunted pieces in the whole world. William Stoneham, the creator, claims the inspiration for the piece came from an old photograph, and somehow, over time, it landed in the hands of a California couple. As the story goes, the sellers who auctioned it on eBay in 2000 kept the painting in their daughter's room, but one morning the girl claimed that the people in the painting were not letting her sleep at night. So for the girl's peace of mind, they set up a motion sensor camera to prove that no monsters were coming out of the painting. However, to their surprise, they captured some truly frightening activity. They awoke to find photos of the boy crawling from the painting, and others where the doll's face had changed to a very angry disposition while holding a weapon. Not only that, it's also rumored to have been responsible for the death of 3 different men who came into contact with the piece at one time or another. Today you can find it hidden in the back room of Smith's Perception Fine Art Gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but be warned, those that witness the painting often complain of nausea or extreme physical pain while in its presence. Moving on to number 9, Wheelie. Some say it's a stuffed dog, while others say it looks more like a sheep, but either way, it's an old, creepy, haunted toy from the 19th century that can be found in the Prince Edward Island Museum in Canada. Nicknamed Wheelie due to the creaky wheels the stuffed animal sits on top of, this nearly 200-year-old toy was found lying inside the walls of the Yeo House while construction was underway. According to the staff, the disfigured sheep-dog toy was simply lying on the ground inside the walls, and so they decided to keep it and put it out on display for their visitors, which would all be well and fine except for the fact that it may have been hidden in a wall for a reason. Apparently Wheelie is known to wander around all by himself and is often found hiding in a different spot than he was left the night before. So again, maybe best to put him back where he was found. Moving on to number 8, Delphi Purple Sapphire. The Delphi Purple Sapphire was a beloved stone once held safely in the Temple of Indra. That was until English Colonel W. Ferris looted it from the temple during the Indian Rebellion in 1857 and brought it back with him to England. However, Ferris soon regretted this decision as he quickly began losing his fortune and his entire family started facing bad luck at every turn. At first, the family blamed the financial hit on a bad investment, but after one of their friends took their own life after holding the stone in their hands, they began to fear that some unseen force could be sabotaging them. Afterwards, the following owner, Edward Heron Allen, had such bad luck that he tried 3 times to get rid of the stone by throwing it in the nearby river, only for it to make its way back into his possession each time. Eventually, Edward decided to lock up the stone in a box in an attempt to seal its powers away, but London's Natural Museum of History got wind of this so-called cursed stone and Edward gave in, giving it to them provided they did not open the box until 3 years after his death and that his daughter may never be permitted to touch it. The museum followed the strict instructions and waited before setting it out on display, but they quickly discovered Edward was not exaggerating. The museum curator who handled the stone a total of 3 times says each time something awful has happened, and so it's remained hidden ever since. Moving on to number 7. Peter Kurten's head. Hidden in the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Wisconsin is one of the most haunting objects you could come across. The severed head of a dead man. But who's the guy? Well, none other than the vampire of Dusseldorf, Peter Kurten. To give you a bit of context, Peter Kurten is widely considered one of the most cruel and deranged men of the 20th century. Between 1913 to 1929, he was a rampant killer and predator, responsible for the death of 10 people, and attempted another 31 killings among his 68 crimes total. While in court, he received the nickname Vampire of Dusseldorf for reasons I'm sure you can imagine, and after freely confessing to all his crimes with no remorse, he was sentenced to execution via the guillotine. But his atrocities did not end there. In fact, shortly before he was executed, he famously turned to his psychiatrist and asked, quote, "Tell me, after my head is chopped off, will I still be able to hear at at least for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck. That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures. Following his beheading, his head was then bisected and his brain was removed in order to be studied. The rest of his head, however, was mummified, transferred to the United States, and tucked away for everyone's safety. Moving on to number 6. Women from Lemb statue. Nicknamed the Goddess of Death, this cursed limestone statue was first unearthed in 1878 in Lemb, Cyprus. Estimated to date back to somewhere around 3500 BC, it's unknown who created the statue or what purpose it may have been for, but it is believed to have been owned by 4 different families, all of whom died within a few years of obtaining the artifact. The first was Lord Elfont, who 6 years after acquiring the statue died along with all 7 members of his family. Next was Ivor Minucci, whose entire family died within 4 years, followed by Lord Thompson Knoll, whose family perished within 4 years. For a while after that, the statue seemingly vanished until it wound up in the hands of Sir Alan Beaverbrook and his family, who, as I'm sure you can predict, all died within a few years. After the last family died, there were 2 remaining family members who somehow managed to escape the deathly fate, and terrified of the powers the statue possessed, they donated it to the Royal Scottish Museum, where it now rests. But before it was safely stowed away, it took one last life, as the museum curator who handled the statue died within the year of touching it. Thank God no one else has touched it since. Moving on to number 5. Robert the Doll. In 1904, a boy named Robert Eugene received a doll as a present from his grandfather. Robert was so excited about the gift that he even named the doll after himself. Almost immediately, his parents felt like something wasn't right. They claimed they would hear Robert speaking to his doll at night and that a strange voice would answer back. As time went on, Robert got more and more attached, and his parents began noticing that his behavior was changing for the worse. When they would notice something strange, like furniture in a different room or objects scattered around the house, Robert would get extremely defensive and blame everything on the doll. However, things only got creepier as Robert got older. He kept the doll even as an adult and brought it to his new home with his wife. Neighbors that walked past said the doll was always looking out the window in the attic and would watch you as you walked by, often changing his expression as if he was taunting you. Years later, when Robert and his wife died, the new owner found the doll in the attic and said that every night they could hear eerie giggling coming from above. From there, it said the doll was donated to a museum in Florida, locked behind glass, and hidden from the public. Coming in at number 4. Hope Diamond. As the legend goes, back in 1666, a French merchant obtained this beautiful blue diamond after illegally plucking the gem from a Hindu idol and selling it to King Louis XIV, a sacrilegious crime for which he was later mauled to death by dogs for committing. But fast forward a few years to the French Revolution, and the cursed gem was allegedly stolen again, this time disappearing for years only to reappear in the 1800s. For years, experts questioned where this jewel had been hidden, but their curiosity was short-lived, as soon the jewel wasted no time ruining lives of those it interacted with, and has routinely been blamed for several tragedies over the years. Some of the misfortunes include the loss of great fortune, people's deaths, and people taking their own lives, while some even say Marie Antoinette's death could have been linked to her possession of the cursed diamond. Nowadays, this cursed object is safely stowed away as part of the Smithsonian Institution, so let's just hope it's never found and stolen again. Otherwise, who knows what could be unleashed. Moving on to number 3. Busby Chair. As the story goes, Thomas Busby was strangely obsessed and protective of this beloved chair, and killed his father-in-law after he found him sitting in it without permission. Before his execution was finalized, Thomas was given one final request, and he chose to have one last drink in his chair. And according to legend, his last words were, "May death come to anyone who dares sit in my chair." Now, of course, no one took this entirely seriously at first. He was a man facing death and was bound to spew a concerning thing or two. Plus, he was known to be a liar and a killer, so no one really took his words to heart. That was until people actually started dying. After Busby's death, multiple reports arose of one tragedy after another, and each of them came from someone who had sat in the killer's beloved chair. One man was found hanging outside the Busby Stoop Inn after sitting in the chair, and many soldiers who sat in the chair during World War II died days later. But nowadays, for the safety of everyone, the chair lives in England Thirsk Museum, hanging from the ceiling so that no one else can ever accidentally be cursed by the evil seat. Coming in at number 2, Nabrok. In 17th century Iceland, there was a well-known witchcraft ritual where people would create pants out of the skin of the deceased in hopes of a better life for them and their families moving forward. Called Nabrok, meaning corpse breeches, or more commonly referred to as necro pants nowadays, the pants were made as a talisman to magically summon more money for whoever made them. However, there was a catch. The man in question had to have consented before death, and the deed could only be done after the burial had taken place. Once loved ones said their goodbyes, you were free to dig up the corpse and peel off the skin, being careful to keep it all in one piece. It was believed that no holes or tears could occur, otherwise the power of the necropants would be lost. But disgustingly, it didn't stop there. Once you had fashioned the pants and put them on your person, the ritual demanded you head out into the village and steal one coin from a destitute widow. From there, the coin was to be placed in the groin of the pants, along with a traditional Icelandic sigil for the ritual to be complete. There is only one known pair of such pants remaining today, and it's hidden in the Museum of Icelandic Sorcery and Witchcraft. And if you ask me, they are just about the most terrifying thing I can think of. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Devil's Rocking Chair. In the early 1950s, the Glatzell family received this rocking chair, but by the summer of 1980, this piece of furniture would play a role in an exorcism so famous they made a movie about it. Long story short, young David Glatzell began seeing visions of what he described was a man with big black eyes, a thin face with animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. Soon after, David was believed to be possessed by the demon living inside the cursed chair, and that is when Ed and Lorraine Warren became involved. Then in comes Arne Johnson, the fiance of David's older sister Debbie, who allegedly during the final exorcism told the demon to leave the boy alone and come into him. As legend has it, the demon moved into Arne, who then shortly after was convicted for killing his landlord, stating in his confession that the devil had made him do it. From there, the cursed chair stayed in Ed and Lorraine's museum for many years until Zach Baggin bought it from them. However, in 2019, Zach closed down the exhibit and hid the chair away after too many terrifying supernatural encounters. Well, that's all I got for you today, friends. I hope you enjoyed this one, and before you go, let me know in the comments what's the scariest thing you've ever found in a museum. Alright, I'm out. Make sure to hit that subscribe button before you go, and I'll see you next time.